The stadiums that were built in the 90s, when there was a lot of rebuilding, all tend to have a fairly common issue, which is about sightlines. And I think we know which is why Accessible Stadia was written. I was involved in the group of people that were putting it together. And the main issue we found was that raised wheelchair bays, platforms are put in with the expectation that everybody would sit down quietly and watch the match. Nobody would ever stand up and celebrate a goal or stand up to see a free kick or when it was exciting or anything. Of course, we all know that's not football. So at some grounds, we'll see sightlines improved because that's been their main issues. At other grounds, there are really enormous range of changes that need to be made. We've still got some quite old grounds in the Premier League. Goodison Park is a wonderful old ground that they've kept immaculately over the years, but not managed to do a lot of development on lately. But they're going to be doing a lot of work in every aspect that you can think of, I think, in terms of amenity seating, in terms of access to seats, in terms of increasing the number of wheelchair bays. And what we're also looking at is all of those areas around the ground so that there's better sort of step-free access, so that signage is better. You know, people tend to think that Accessible Stadia is just about the numbers of wheelchair bays or raised platforms, and actually, it's an incredibly comprehensive guide. And there'll be plenty of you in the room that once that commitment was made that thought, right, we better go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and you'll know how comprehensive it is. And
brilliant, thank you for that.
Not what needs to be done.
And it's clear that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's being started, and that's really, really great. Joyce, you've been campaigning for this for a long time. What does the commitment mean to you?
I guess, if I'm really honest, when the pledge finally came through, I sort of knew something was coming, but it was still quite gobsmacking when it happened. And if I'm really honest, my initial reaction was, why 17 and not 18? And then I thought, well, hey, hold on, this is the Premier League. Actually, if anybody has the resource to make this happen in that time frame, the Premier League does. So I guess for those of us at Level Playing Field and wider afield and our friends in the other fans' organisations, we knew this was right. I don't think I've ever met anybody in the industry, in football or in other sports, on a one-to-one that has said to me, you're bonkers, this is a crazy thing to ask for, it's not real. You know, it's not right or it's the wrong thing to do. We all know it's the right thing to do. What we did meet for a lot of years was the reasons why we couldn't do it. Thankfully, I think we're at a point in time now where we realise, actually, it's time to stop all those silly excuses, because there's never a can't in anything. We all know that. There's always a can. It's just how you do it. So we've worked for a lot of years in football in particular with both leagues in a very positive way, but we needed something like the pledge to move this forward, and we've had a lot of support from lots of different friends, from government, from the HRC, from the Sports Ground Safety Authority, across the board we've had support. So it's an exciting moment, but I really don't want us to be complacent, because it's certainly not job done. We all know and recognise that. So this is a great moment. We certainly at Level Playing Field celebrated for about 5 minutes and then said, right, what next? Because this is just a journey we're on. So we're looking very closely. We know there's a lot of work and activity that's positive going on. We also know that our friends at Football League are very positively engaging. What I'm excited about is what it's also meant for other sports, because it's like a catalyst event. We can learn from London 2012 and what was achieved. I think disabled fans understood what they were entitled to after London 2012. So I think this is a great moment, but there's a lot to do. And then what I really hope, because I'm greedy, is that we can use this really as a platform for other sports, but more than that, for the wider society. So I think there's great opportunities, but there's still work to do.
Great. So, Shaun, from the Football League point of view, I appreciate it's a different challenge to that of the Premier Leagues, but is the Football League likely to be making a similar commitment in the near future?
No, and you know, it's very easy to stand there and say no, and it's not a case of can't, and Joyce is exactly right. What we have to do is try and work out how best to address the specific issues that our clubs face inside the stadia. We are as committed, and it was nice to hear Joyce talk of the work that our clubs and the league staff have done in trying to move initiatives forwards. You know, our clubs aren't rich with cash. The majority of the funds we have, whether it's right or wrong, go out onto the playing field on a Saturday afternoon. But we're committed to make the best experience possible for every single supporter coming to our stadiums on a match day. You know, the principles of reasonable adjustment, which you've all heard to done to death to a certain extent, are very, very relevant. I mean, the wheelchair bay occupancy, and I know it's not just about wheelchair base, but that's just use that as a focus for now, is at 49% across the available spaces already at our stadiums. Actual capacity is at 57% overall, so actually the wheelchair base are used less than the actual average stadium occupancy. So what we're going to concentrate on is not trying to find a one-size-fits-all solution, actually positively engage with the clubs and with level playing field, and indeed the disabled supporters that attend that club, to try and find the right solution to improve the experience for fans turning up at our stadiums.
Great, thank you. Joyce, is there anything that you might want to come back on to that, taking the very real data that Shaun is putting in front of us and what that means, but also noting his caveat that he recognises that we're not merely talking about wheelchair access, so thinking in the bigger picture as well?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely, you know, often if you ask someone to imagine a disabled person, the bubble in their head is somebody sat in a wheelchair, and of course, as we all know, that isn't the case. There are many differently disabled people and lots of people with hidden disabilities, and it's really important that we address all of those issues. I would challenge Shaun on a couple of points, as he will expect, and it would be remiss of me not to. It doesn't have to cost money. There are many innovative ways, and in fact there are football league clubs, immediately springs to mind Derby County, where they've turned this into something very different, a real business opportunity. They actually sell more season tickets because they create more spaces, and I'd like to know a little bit more behind those stats, you know, where there are 49% of the wheelchair user spaces occupied. Why is that? Are we reaching out to the communities? Are we reaching out to people like me who, you know, a decade ago was stuck at home? I gave up on life. I became disabled and I sat at home. I'd had a busy work and social life, and I lost all my confidence, my self-esteem. I am absolutely sure there are lots of disabled people out in our communities still feeling the same, so we've got to reach out to them. And that's a win-win for everybody, because it will build the reputations of the clubs, which is important. It will bring more business. Everybody feels better when they are surrounded by inclusion. Everybody. I don't know anybody that doesn't see the benefits of it. So we've got to get better at that. And I don't want to, you know, sort of jump on Shaun too much, because the Football League is doing a lot of very, very positive work. But we've got to stop that sort of comment, because it's not helpful to compare. Because I would ask, do disabled people at those clubs know in their communities that the facilities do exist? And are the facilities that are there adequate enough? You know, I've been to enough games in my time where I've sat for 90 minutes and stared at somebody's back and thought, I hope I press record at home on my recorder, because I need to go home and watch the match back, if I'm lucky enough that the match is being televised. So it's all of the above. You know, if I'm a blind fan, is there adequate audio description so I can really enjoy the match experience? So we've got a lot of work to do, but I think actually we have to see all the opportunities rather than the reasons why we perhaps don't do some things.
Would you like to come back on that?
Well, I mean, the fact is we agree in so many different areas. You know, we started talking about sightlines. You know, sightlines are the issue for the wheelchair sport. Hence why we major on that particular point. You know, the inclusion factor for everybody with disabled, it is a win-win situation. It is actually that opportunity that Joyce has just described. And the real challenge for our clubs is not going out and spending hundreds of £1,000s on new facilities. It's using the facilities that they've got, improving those facilities, and actually they're using some exposure to get people in to use that empty space. And it's as much about how we communicate that message through and how we engage, whether it's via the community schemes, where, you know, you can come to the football. You know, why do we use football as a vehicle for breaking down barriers that, as Joyce has very openly just said, you know, 10 years ago was going to give up? it won't just be football that's giving it that emphasis, but if we can change one person's life by making a football stadium accessible, or the education, removing the fear factor, knowing where to pick tickets up, knowing how to get in, what facilities are going to be there for you, we win. So the Football League's approach is going to be around improving that experience and trying to get the best value for the fan that's coming, because that actually helps fill that space, does deliver need, and all the issues about reasonable judgment are irrelevant at that stage, because the people that are coming, able-bodied or disabled, whatever that disability is getting full value for their experience at that football club ground, and that has to be the target.
I'm hearing a real commitment on the stage from everyone and a real belief that this is the right thing to do, and that you actually, there's more than one way to do it. There's no panacea to this. So now I'm going to throw it out into the audience, and I really want some questions for the team up here that's going to allow us to actually get to some of those things that we can do to make this happen, please.
Hi, I'm Amanda Jackson from the Football Supporters Federation.
Just got a mic coming to you. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Amanda Jacks from the Football Supporters Federation, and I deal with complaints from fans. I applaud the changes that the Premier League and the Football League are making, and in particular I think Sunderland deserve a mention for their sensory room for young people with autism, which I just think is fantastic. I think talking about the physical the adaptations to the stadiums is fine, but certainly the common theme through the complaints that I receive are the lack of understanding, not just from matchday stewards, but from club staff as well. We've had a championship club secretary write to the parent of a fan who has learning difficulties, and she said, your son's learning difficulties, in inverted commas, should not excuse his behaviour. I've had a disability liaison officer tell a disabled fan the only obligation that a club needs to make for their disabled fans is to provide an extra carer's ticket. I've had numerous people with various physical and mental conditions being turned away at the turnstiles or challenged at the turnstiles for being drunk. I could go on, but that's the kind of gist. So I just wondered what the commitment was for training, not just club staff, but right through down to matchday staff. So people with difficulties that a lot of us can't even comprehend don't have those compounded by what is effectively ignorance.
Thank you for your question. Cathy, maybe I can ask you to take that one to start.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, certainly one we're very aware of. We do two things in this. One is that we also do, alongside picking up feedback from fans and the sort of complaints that you get, we also do mystery assessments on clubs so that we pick up really the detail of the issues like buying tickets, the challenges in terms of making sure that people get the reasonable adjustments that they need and getting their point across and being understood. And we also have quite a comprehensive training programme. I think the thing with training is it needs to be constant. We have an online training programme that people can do, but also it is always a matter, I think, of having these discussions with people. We've got a full programme of unconscious bias training going across the clubs. I think it has to be continual because there's always new staff coming in. There are always matchday staff that perhaps are fairly new. There's always contracted staff. So I think it's a sort of continual programme of making sure that everybody understands what the issues are that they may be dealing with on a day and understanding what the issues are that fans may be dealing with. Continual programme, really, I think, that never really stops.
From a Football League point of view, similar, I presume?
Oh, it is similar. I mean, we've got to aspire to the highest possible standard. And, it is very easy to, there will be issues every single season, every single game, where somebody hasn't received the treatment that they felt was appropriate, or definitely was appropriate in the circumstances. There are many, many other stories of how staff have gone beyond the extra mile to make that experience worthwhile as well. So there is always a balance to take into account. But the point is, it's about finding the highest common denominator and going to that rather than settling for an average performance and hoping that the individual who needed the help found the steward that had all the training. We've just got to bring the standard. We've got to bring the standard up to try and improve overall. Complacency was a word that Joyce used. We can't be complacent when we've passed a mystery shopper test and it's gone well. It might be the one steward who is the standout performer who happened to get the customer at that time. We've got to raise that whole standard, but we need the fans and spectator groups to work with us. The referee is going to go professional in the Championship next year. They're still not going to get every single decision right. So we do have to have an element of we need to work together to move this bar upwards over a period of time, and not judged by the worst experience, not judged by the best experience. Look at just moving forward year on year. And if we do that, everybody in the room will be doing a credit to the people who come through their stadiums.
Thank you. Do we have more questions from the floor? There's definitely time for one more. Please.
Yeah. I think we also have to see, and I know, Amanda, you always follow through any complaints you get from disabled fans, and likewise at Level Playing Field, we get around about 400 a year, and most of those are around football. And the majority are genuine issues that are fixable, and often fixable without any cost implication. So there's always an opportunity. We certainly have a good dialogue with the clubs, with the leagues, and working with, as Andrea over there, with Cathy, and so on and so on. So we can always turn it into a positive. And I'm going to give a little plug for Level Playing Field here. We've just developed a brand new access and inclusion awareness training programme. We're actually working with Football League to run those out with seminars with their clubs in the coming close season. But additionally, that's available for any club, and any single person that is customer facing in any shape or form on a match or non-match day, in my view, should receive inclusion training, and not just disability, but the wider aspects, because that's the society we rightly live in, and therefore we must all be familiar in how we interact. And I will often hear people say, actually, I'm a bit scared to speak to a disabled person in case I say the wrong thing. And the answer is always, actually, it's hard to say the wrong thing. Most people, as long as you're not offensive in the way you say something, but it is those situations when people make assumptions and then it all snowballs out of control. So we can always learn from it. Please, if you would like your club to have disability awareness training or access and inclusion, we'd be delighted to come along. We're very competitive in what we offer, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved and Ruth and her team have put together. But it is about that constant journey of change, and even when we get to a point that all of these venues are accessible, we're still going to hit some of those, and it's just that constant journey, and it is an evolving duty. It's not a standstill point in time.
Thank you. Cathy, you want to
Yeah, I
say?
just want to say I'd go further than customer facing as well, because I think that it's also about any staff that might work in a club, anybody in a club might come into contact with. And it's also about policy, because what we sometimes find is there are people who say, well, I get this, and this is, I'm dealing with fans and I sort of understand it, but I'm having difficulty explaining to the people who are making the policies at the club that this is what we need to adapt. So, and then I think it's just a matter of, if everybody understands it, then you've got a much better environment for everybody.
One question from the floor. Just got a mic on its way.
David Ewells from Newcastle City Council, SAG Chair. If Premier League clubs haven't met the commitment from the Premier League by August 2017, will there be any sanctions imposed, or will it fall to individuals or Level Playing Field to challenge under the Equalities Act?
It's the clubs that have made the commitment, so it's up to the clubs to meet the commitment, basically. It's not in the rules, it's a commitment the clubs made, so once they've made the commitment, yeah, it's absolutely up to them to meet it.
And if
No
they
sanction
don't,
from the league.
there's nothing that the Premier League would do to sanction that?
No, there's no rule that we can sanction them under. It's not a Premier League or FA or UEFA rule, no.
Please.
But I'm sure the public will be aware if anybody hasn't met the commitment, so.
Yeah, we've just recently heard some worrying sort of rhetoric from a couple of clubs, and I'm not sure if it's misinformation, but probably without putting you on the spot too much today. Yeah. But we are hearing from some clubs that the obligation on them is to come up with a plan by August 17 and not to actually have met at least the minimum requirements of accessible stadia. And for me that's deeply worrying, because we missed so many opportunities in the past to do this. We've got to get it right.
The commitment was clear, and the commitment was to meet the requirements by 2017. That isn't possible for every club to meet everything in it. There are a lot of challenges. There are things like your toilets might be a metre too far away from some of your bays. There are things that still need to be fixed, so not everything will be done by 2017, and we know that. I think once people had really looked at the detail of what needed to be done, they could see not everything will be completed. But there has to be a plan alongside that. So I think where the plan is this is what we're going to do now in this summer. Most of the work will be done out of season, but not all of it. Some of it will be able to be done in between games during the season. And this is what we're going to be doing in 2017. And if there's anything that can't be completed because there isn't planning permission or because a new stadium's being built or whatever, well, let's see the plan for making sure that the other bits are done. So that's where we, I think, have emphasised the point about you've got to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, well,
I guess the
none of it's gonna
scary
be
bit
done.
in that for me is what we then do, because once we get to August 17, are we going to have a finite time to actually then deliver? Because I'm just a bit
No, I
worried
don't-
that tails
I don't-
away.
No, I
and-
don't think we should you can't put a finite time on it anyway, because you can't put a finite time of things you're not in control of with planning or whatever. You can put your estimates in and you can put what you expect. And I don't think we should put too much of a finite time on it, because quite a few people that we've spoken to, architects in particular, have said, don't do what you did in the 1990s. Don't rush into this too much. Get it right. So there's a bit of a challenge there in making sure that the changes that are made are the right changes, and that there's a short-term plan and a long-term plan.
I think that this has been a fascinating panel, and I actually think we could probably take 100 more questions from the floor, but I'm really sad that we can't. But what I definitely heard, and what I think you guys probably heard, is a real commitment, an understanding of that commitment isn't merely about meeting some standards, but it's about setting some standards, about what we expect from the clubs providing services to those spectators that come in. But again, that theme of each spectator being an individual and the spectator experience for that individual, regardless of what they bring into the Stadia with them, is really, really crucially important. I certainly commend all parties on the stage for stepping forward and saying, this is important, we are doing something about it, this is what we're doing. I think it's great that we have organisations like Level Playing Field, etc., to really challenge and push and make sure that bar doesn't stay here and that we keep pushing it up. I think that's been a really, really fascinating panel. I'm really, really grateful to all of our panellists for giving up their time today to talk about this. So to Cathy, Joyce and Shaun, thank you very much.